Imagine waking up one ordinary morning, and for a split second, everything feels unfamiliar. The ceiling, the light through the curtains, the sound of the world outside, even the weight of your own thoughts. You sit up, and a strange question rises, not loudly, but unmistakably, like a whisper that refuses to leave. What if the life you're living is only the surface of something far deeper? What if the version of reality you've accepted, the version you've been trained to call normal, is only a narrow slice of what's actually here? Now imagine that you had a guide for that question. Not a guru selling easy answers, not a motivational speaker handing you slogans, but a mind sharp enough to cut through the comfortable lies we live with every day. That mind belongs to Aldous Huxley, a writer and thinker who spent his life pressing on the thin walls of human perception, asking what we are, what we're doing, and why we keep mistaking our habits for truth. And as you listen, I want you to hold one thought close, because it will quietly shape everything we explore. Huxley's message isn't just intellectual. It's personal. It reaches into your daily routine, your fears, your relationships, your ambition, your loneliness, your moments of wonder, and the hidden pattern behind your choices. The closer you look, the more you realize that the real drama of life isn't just what happens to you. It's the lens through which you experience what happens. So let me ask you something, and don't rush past it. How much of who you are today is something you consciously chose, and how much of it was chosen for you? How many of your beliefs are truly yours? How many of your desires are planted by culture, by comparison, by quiet persuasion, by childhood echoes you still obey without noticing? Huxley believed that what most people call reality is, in large part, a mental construction. Not because the world isn't real, but because our experience of the world is filtered, edited, trimmed down, and arranged into a manageable story. The mind doesn't show you everything. It shows you what it thinks you need in order to function. And that sounds harmless until you realize what it implies. If your mind is filtering reality, then your life might not be limited by the world, but by the filter. Your confidence, your anxiety, your shame, your hope, your sense of possibility, all of it may be shaped more by interpretation than by fact. Think about it. Two people can live the same moment, the same event, the same circumstance, and walk away with completely different worlds inside them. One feels cursed, the other feels challenged. One feels rejected, the other feels redirected. One collapses, the other adapts. The difference isn't always strength. Often, it's perception. Huxley drew from ideas that suggest consciousness is capable of far more than our daily awareness allows. He was fascinated by the possibility that the brain functions like a reducing valve, narrowing the immense flood of reality into a thin stream that we can handle. In other words, it's not that reality is small. It's that our access to it is restricted. You are not seeing the whole. You are seeing the version your mind permits. Now, if that's true, it leads to a question that can feel thrilling and terrifying at the same time. What would you notice if your filter changed? What would you discover about your own life if you stopped automatically believing every thought your mind produces? What if the story you repeat in your head isn't the truth, but a habit? Because here's something Huxley understood with unsettling clarity. Much of human suffering doesn't come from what happens. It comes from what we say about what happens. It comes from the narration. The inner commentary. The constant meaning-making machine that labels events as proof that you're unworthy, or unsafe, or doomed, or behind, or not enough. And notice how quickly that machine works. Something goes wrong, and within seconds your mind builds a courthouse in your head, appoints itself judge and jury, and sentences you with a familiar verdict. Of course this happened. This always happens to me. I knew I'd fail. People can tell I'm not confident. I'm too much. I'm not enough. It doesn't even feel like a story, does it? It feels like reality. That's the trick. The most powerful illusions are the ones that don't announce themselves. Huxley warned that societies, often without cruelty and without visible force, shape individuals through conditioning. Culture tells you what to value. Education tells you what counts as intelligence. Advertising tells you what to desire. Social pressure tells you what to fear. And slowly, quietly, you learn to live inside a pre-built script. You learn what success looks like, what failure means, what's acceptable, what's embarrassing, what's normal. Then one day you wake up and realize you've been living a life you didn't fully design. And maybe you've already felt that. That strange emptiness after achieving something you thought would finally satisfy you. That moment where you reach a milestone and, instead of peace, you feel a new hunger, a new anxiety, a new comparison. You thought the finish line would feel like freedom, but it feels like you're on a treadmill that speeds up every time you catch your breath. Huxley saw this coming. He understood that modern life doesn't only exhaust the body. It overwhelms the mind. Not through oppression, but through distraction. Not through chains, but through endless stimulation. Comfort, entertainment, noise, novelty, constant updates, constant input, constant movement. And the price of that flood is subtle. When your attention is constantly pulled outward, you lose the ability to look inward. When you can't sit with silence, you can't hear yourself. When you can't face discomfort, you can't learn what it's trying to teach you. So ask yourself, honestly, how much of your attention do you truly command? When was the last time you did one thing, and you were fully there? No second screen, no half listening, no mental rehearsal of what you'll do next, no silent panic about the future. Just presence. Just this moment, as it is. Huxley believed real freedom begins inside. Not as a poetic idea, but as a practical truth. You can change your job, move to a new city, start a new relationship, reinvent your routine, and still feel trapped if the same unconscious patterns follow you everywhere. Because the real cage is not always circumstance. Often, it's the mind's conditioning. The beliefs you never examined. The fears you treat like facts. The identity you cling to because it feels familiar, even when it hurts. Identity, for Huxley, was one of the biggest illusions humans suffer under. People speak about the self as if it's fixed, solid, permanent. This is who I am. I've always been like this. I'm just not the kind of person who can do that. And these sentences feel harmless until you realize they function like locks. They close doors before you even touch the handle. But what if the self isn't a statue? What if it's a process? What if it's fluid, shaped by repetition, shaped by environment, shaped by what you practice, shaped by what you allow, shaped by what you believe you deserve? Huxley urged people to see identity as something constructed, and because it is constructed, it can be reconstructed. That doesn't mean you become fake. It means you stop confusing your habits with your nature. Think of how often people cling to pain because it has become part of their identity. Someone holds on to bitterness because letting go would mean admitting they're vulnerable. Someone holds on to self-doubt because confidence feels like a risk. Someone stays small because being seen feels dangerous. Familiar suffering can feel safer than unfamiliar freedom. So here's a hard question, but it's also a liberating one. Who would you be if you stopped believing every thought you have about yourself? Not some fantasy version of you, not a perfect version, but the version that exists when you stop automatically obeying the old narrative. The version that tries again without performing for approval. The version that rests without guilt. The version that speaks without apologizing for existing. The version that doesn't need to be flawless in order to be worthy. Huxley's thinking pushes you toward an uncomfortable realization. The mind is not always your friend. It is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used well or poorly. The mind can illuminate, but it can also distort. It can plan, but it can also panic. It can protect you, but it can also imprison you. And one of the most dangerous prisons is certainty. Certainty feels strong, but it often hides fear. When you're certain you already know who you are, you stop exploring. When you're certain the world is a certain way, you stop learning. When you're certain your pain means you're broken, you stop healing. Huxley valued humility, not as weakness, but as openness. The willingness to admit, maybe I don't see the whole picture. That one sentence can be the beginning of freedom. Because the moment you admit your perception might be incomplete, you create space. Space for curiosity. Space for change. Space for another interpretation. Space for another self. Now, let's talk about suffering, because Huxley did not treat suffering as an abstract concept. He treated it as a central feature of human life, and he challenged the way we typically respond to it. Most people, when pain appears, do one of two things. They resist it, or they escape it. They fight the feeling, deny it, bury it, distract from it, numb it, rationalize it away, or pretend it doesn't matter. But Huxley suggested that suffering becomes unbearable when we refuse to look at it clearly. Not because looking at it instantly makes it vanish, but because clarity prevents the mind from adding unnecessary layers. The mind loves to multiply pain. A difficult event happens, and then the mind adds shame. The mind adds catastrophic predictions. The mind adds comparison. The mind adds self-blame. The mind adds hopelessness. The event is one thing, but the mental storm around it becomes 10 things. So imagine a different approach. Imagine you didn't treat pain as an enemy, but as information. Imagine you could sit with an emotion long enough to understand what it's pointing to. Grief might be pointing to love. Anger might be pointing to a boundary. Fear might be pointing to something you value. Loneliness might be pointing to a deeper need for connection, not just noise. When you stop running, you start hearing. And yes, that requires courage. Because there's a reason people avoid their inner world. The inner world is honest. It doesn't flatter you. It doesn't keep up appearances. It shows you what you actually feel, not what you wish you felt. But Huxley believed that transformation is only possible when you are willing to see what is true inside you, without turning it into a moral verdict. Because awareness without compassion becomes cruelty. If you watch your mind only to judge it, you will become exhausted. But awareness with compassion becomes healing. It becomes the ability to say, this is what I'm feeling, and I don't have to hate myself for it. It becomes the ability to see your patterns without defending them, and without drowning in guilt. Notice how different that is from the way many people live. Many people treat their inner world like a battlefield. They bully themselves into productivity. They shame themselves into change. They punish themselves for being human. And then they wonder why they feel empty even when they're doing well. Huxley's vision of growth is quieter and deeper. It begins with attention. Not forced positivity, not denial, not constant self-improvement as a performance, but attention. The kind of attention that watches a reaction arise and asks, what is this? The kind of attention that notices a craving and asks, what am I actually hungry for? The kind of attention that catches a harsh inner voice and asks, where did you learn to speak to yourself like that? If you can do that, something shifts. You stop being the puppet of your unconscious habits, and you begin to become the observer. And the observer is powerful, because the observer can choose. Imagine how that would change your relationships. Think about an argument you've had, maybe recently. In the moment, it's so easy to react from old patterns. Defensiveness. Pride. The need to be right. The fear of being blamed. But imagine if, in that moment, you could pause and ask, what part of me is actually threatened right now? Is it your ego? Is it an old wound? Is it a fear of abandonment? Is it the need to feel in control? That question alone can prevent years of repeated conflict. Imagine how it would change your work. Instead of operating purely from anxiety and external pressure, you begin to notice what drives you. Are you working to build something meaningful, or to prove you're enough? Are you chasing achievement, or running from the feeling of being ordinary? Are you exhausted because the workload is heavy, or because you can't stop measuring your worth by your output? And imagine how it would change your sense of purpose. Many people search for purpose as if it's a hidden object somewhere outside them. As if they need to find the perfect career, the perfect relationship, the perfect lifestyle, and then meaning will automatically arrive. But Huxley points in another direction. He suggests that meaning is not only discovered. It is created, through consciousness. Through the quality of your attention. Through the depth of your presence. Through the way you interpret, respond, and choose. This leads to one of the most important ideas Huxley circles back to again and again. The quality of your consciousness determines the quality of your life. Not your resume. Not your reputation. Not your followers. Not your past. Not even your circumstances in the way you think. Because two people can have the same circumstances and live in entirely different inner worlds. One lives in bitterness and scarcity. The other lives in gratitude and possibility. One is constantly at war with reality. The other learns to work with it. And here is where Huxley becomes almost urgent. He believed the greatest danger is not pain. The greatest danger is unconsciousness. Living on autopilot. Drifting through days without noticing them. Repeating patterns without questioning them. Numbing yourself with endless stimulation. Chasing approval without realizing you're doing it. Seeking status to fill a quiet hole you won't look at directly. So let me ask you, not to accuse you, but to wake you up gently. How many moments of your life have you missed because your mind was somewhere else? How many meals have you eaten without tasting? How many conversations have you had where you were waiting to speak instead of truly listening? How many sunsets have you looked at while thinking about something else? How many times have you been physically present but emotionally absent? Huxley's answer to this isn't a trick. It's simple, and that's why it's so hard. Wake up. Not once, but repeatedly. Wake up to your thoughts. Wake up to your habits. Wake up to your fears. Wake up to your ability to choose. Wake up to the actual texture of your life. Awakening, for Huxley, isn't about believing a certain doctrine. It's not about adopting a new identity as a spiritual person. It's not about escaping the world. It's about seeing clearly. Seeing without the usual fog of conditioning, fear, and desire. Seeing without the constant distortion of the ego screaming, me, me, me. Seeing reality with more depth, more honesty, and strangely, more tenderness. Because when you see clearly, something unexpected happens. Compassion grows. Not as a performance, but as a natural result of awareness. The more you observe your own mind, the more you understand how fragile humans can be. How much of our behavior is driven by pain, by fear, by longing, by confusion. You begin to judge less, not because you become passive, but because you see the complexity behind actions. You see yourself in others, and others in yourself. And that sense of interconnectedness changes the entire emotional tone of life. You stop feeling like a separate, isolated creature fighting the world for survival. You start sensing that you are part of something larger, something woven together. Not in a mystical way you have to force yourself to believe, but in a direct way you can feel when you're truly present. Your choices affect others. Your mood spreads. Your attention changes the atmosphere. Your kindness can interrupt someone's despair. Your cruelty can deepen it. Your awareness matters. This is why Huxley's philosophy isn't just about understanding. It's about responsibility. If the quality of your consciousness shapes your life, then your inner work is not selfish. It's fundamental. When you become less reactive, you create less harm. When you become more present, you become more trustworthy. When you stop living unconsciously, you stop repeating the same damage in new forms. So what does waking up actually look like, in practice, in the middle of a busy life? It looks like pausing before you react. It looks like noticing the urge to reach for distraction and asking, what am I avoiding? It looks like sitting with an uncomfortable feeling for 30 seconds longer than you want to, just to learn its shape. It looks like catching yourself mid-comparison and remembering, this is a mental habit, not a measurement of truth. It looks like choosing to breathe, choosing to listen, choosing to tell the truth, choosing to stop performing. It also looks like accepting that you will fall asleep again. You will drift. You will forget. You will get pulled into old patterns. Huxley wasn't asking for perfection. He was pointing toward practice. Awakening isn't a finish line. It's a recurring decision. Again and again, you return to clarity. Again and again, you return to your presence. Again and again, you reclaim your attention from the noise. And if you can do that, even slightly more than you did yesterday, your life begins to change in a way that is almost difficult to explain to someone who hasn't felt it. Because the world might look the same, but your relationship to it changes. A problem becomes a puzzle instead of a catastrophe. A setback becomes a lesson instead of a life sentence. A quiet evening becomes nourishing instead of empty. A simple moment becomes vivid again. Here is the final insight to hold on to, the one that ties everything together. Huxley believed life is not mainly about accumulating experiences. It's about deepening consciousness. It's about learning to perceive, not merely to possess. Because experience, in the deepest sense, is not just what happens to you. It is what you do with what happens to you. And that means you are not helpless. Even when you can't control events, you can influence meaning. Even when you can't change the past, you can change the way it lives inside you. Even when fear appears, you can watch it instead of worshiping it. Even when the mind tells you a familiar story, you can question it. You can say, is that true? You can say, is that kind? You can say, is that who I want to be? Your life expands in direct proportion to your willingness to perceive it clearly. Not perfectly, but clearly. Clearly enough to notice the patterns. Clearly enough to interrupt the autopilot. Clearly enough to stop confusing your thoughts with reality. Clearly enough to stop living by default.